Hey, fifth grade. We're in a good place here. We're obviously in this process pretty good. We've traced around the outside. We've used our paint bucket to make it transparent so we can see the image still underneath that gray out. And then we've used the push-pull tool to give ourselves three-dimensional geometry so that we can start the process of making sure that everything inside is going to show up the way we want it to. So I'm going to show you a little bit here. I'm going to scroll in. This is not something you need to do. I just want to make sure that you see that. So I'm zooming in to show you that we have done the push-pull. We're looking at three-dimensional geometry. And because we're looking at three-dimensional geometry, that puts us in a place where we can actually start to talk about and look at and worry about the inside of the object. So the next step to do is to do all the outlines of anything internal, all the internal geometry. Now in this 3D print, there's really not a whole lot going on here. Mostly we just got that little eye cut out and then the two eyes. So what I'm going to do is exactly what I said. I'm going to get my pencil tool and I'm going to trace around the outside of all of this internal geometry. And again, you can see I'm using my zoom tool to zoom in a little bit. I'll use that pan tool to move my mouse or move my placement a little bit. And then I'm going to continue tracing around the outside. So I need to trace all the internal geometry that I have in this object, everything that I want to appear, everything that I want to be part of what my final keychain looks like needs to be traced here in this process. So again, you see I'm getting a blue line. I've got to make sure that I avoid that, just adjust my location a little bit, and I'm able to avoid that. So again, I'm going to do some more tracing here. I know this is fun watching me trace, but there we go. So now I've got that little eye cut out in his outfit done, and I'm going to go in for the eyes. For me, the eyes are pretty much circular, so I'm going to do my best job. I'm actually going to use the circle tool, I think, and try and find the exact center, and then just kind of get that circle to match up as well as I can. I think that's pretty good. And rather than doing that again, what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to click on this one. I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to paste it over here, and then you can see it's right there, and I'm going to try and make sure that I match it up. You can see that I drag that line. I have to do a move here, so you get that matched up as well as I can, and then I'm going to try and get right there and see if I can match that up again with this guy. Actually, I think I'm in pretty good shape, so there we go. So now I've got my two eyes and my head cut out, and that's really it. I've traced all the internal geometry that I want to, and I'm ready to do the next step. Now, there's a couple things I want to point out to you that are pretty important, so we're gonna spend a little more time in this video. If you've already traced all your internal geometry, you're in good shape. We'll talk about that next step in a minute, but here's some things to think about. So here's an image. Here's another thing that I'm working on right now. You can see I've done some of the tracing of the internal geometry, but the mouth is what I want to talk specifically about. I've seen some kids do this kind of thing in the past where they take their line tool and they're like, oh, well, it's basically just a line. I'm just going to trace the line, and I'm going to do a real good job of it. And here we go. I'm getting my line traced. There we go. So I've got that little smirky, frowny face that he's done. I'm good. Well, here's the thing. That's not going to do anything. In order for a 3D printer to print something, it has to be three-dimensional, right? And this is just a line that we've drawn on the top of the object. So that's not going to do anything. If we want the mouth to show up, then we have to do the same thing we've done for everything else, which is we have to trace around the outside of that mouth, which is going to be considerably more work than just doing what we just did, right? In fact, it's making me sweat here a little bit. I got to work to get these lines where I want them to be. So again, this is obviously much more work than just drawing 5 little line segments that made that frowny face line kind of appear. But in order to make this 3D print, and again, that's the issue, is not that we can't make the shape happen, is that we want to make it so that this shape can actually 3D print. In order to make it 3D print, we have to make it into a three-dimensional object. And in order for it to be a three-dimensional object, it has to be able to be push-pulled. So what I'm doing right now is trying to get to the point where I have basically a closed figure that I then can push-pull into a three-dimensional shape. So again, just trace it around the outside. I'm trying to do this as quickly as possible so you can stop being bothered by my nonsense. But there we go. We've got a closed figure now. And I'm going to show you, if I grab the push-pull tool, you can see now I can actually push-pull that object, which is, again, what this whole exercise was all about, was making sure that I had a closed figure that I would be able to push-pull. You can see each of these closed regions are closed figures that I can push-pull, which means I can make them three-dimensional, which means they'll 3D print. I'll show you another example of the same kind of thing. I've seen some people doing some animals. Here's an example. Like some kids would do that, this little separation between tail and, I don't know, rump. They'd try and do a line here. Well, here's the thing. That line actually doesn't do anything unless you make that line three-dimensional. So you're going to need to think about whether or not you want to make that separation happen. If you want that separation to happen, then you're going to need to make it a closed figure that you can make three-dimensional, right? So what I'm doing right now is doing just that. Now, oopsies, let me undo that one. Now, at some levels, you may need to eyeball it, right? So here, I'm trying to create that separation, but I want to make sure that I'm still true to the artistic integrity of this original image, right? So here I'm doing my best here to do that. And again, we're going to have to kind of figure out where to go in some ways, because if we do all of this, then it's going to be a little bit. Then we're basically going to be push-pulling a shaded region in this particular image, right? So maybe the best thing to do there is not all of this, but rather something that will make it look like this separation, and at the same time not do too much damage to the integrity of the artistic thoughts here. So if we get our push-pull tool, you can see I've got a separate region there. I would be able to push-pull that and make that something. Same thing here with the separation between these legs, or the underbody and the legs. You're going to need to make those things three-dimensional or separate regions, right? So this leg, obviously, we block that off from the rest of the body. We're going to have a separate region, and once we have a separate region, we've got something we can print. These little delineations between the head and the body, again, in order to make those print, you're going to need to trace around the outside of them and then push-pull them to a different height to make them three-dimensional. We'll talk more about that push-pull part later, but again, in order to make it three-dimensional, we've got to trace around the outside. We can't just make lines. So again, hope that helps. Excited to see the work you guys do. Excited to see all of your exciting and fun and interesting custom 3D print projects. We're getting closer.